everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to do another piece kind of similar to last week, but at least that was my intention from the beginning, but I ended up completely changing it up midway through because I got an idea that actually worked out really well, so I'm excited to show you what I did. But first, what I'm doing here is I'm starting on my typical 6 by 12 inch cradled board that I have gessoed. That's a size that I like because I like the size, but also because it's kind of the largest that I can figure out how to video with any kind of success. So that's what we're working with right now. So I'm starting by covering the board there with some Titan Buff and a little bit of Payne's Gray. I'm just kind of going around the edges with the Payne's Gray just to kind of give myself a loose border to work within, and I like to have that dark color down at the bottom left hand side of the board or the canvas that I'm working on, just a personal preference. But this time I'm doing a little more with actually creating almost like a frame within the piece. So I've got a big fluffy brush there that I went in and kind of just blended the Payne's Gray into the Titan Buff. And if you go in with a dry brush like that and really work the paint in, I've found that you can get this really neat like streaky feathery look that you'll see here in a minute, and I like to use that in some of my pieces. It almost has the look of like a water stain or something like that, but it works really well for the mood of the pieces that I like to create. So as I'm working on this, I am fully prepared to do another floral collage with some gel prints that I had made. But I took a small break and I got this epiphany while I was in the shower, which is weirdly enough where a lot of my best art ideas come from. So I thought I would try it out here, fingers crossed, and it actually kind of worked. So I'm taking those artificial flowers that I used to make the collage papers on the gel prints in last week's video, and I'm using some modeling paste and applying it directly to the flowers to see if I can get like an imprint and stamping it on the canvas. And it kind of worked actually exactly the way I wanted it to. So you'll see me here, I'm just playing around a little bit with a couple of different ideas. I'm going in there just with, I had like the tip of a bottle that I was just using to carve into that a little bit. And I'm trying a few different ways here to just see what this does, because this is not something that I've ever tried before, using the modeling paste as a stamping medium. So what I like about it is that it's not giving me an absolute perfect impression, which could also be really frustrating, I think, under some circumstances, but that's going to work really well for this piece. And if you've seen any of my other work, that's the style that I typically work in. I am a very abstract mixed media artist, and I work very intuitively. Nothing is written in stone or black and white, so to speak. So I kind of like that modeled look. So here I'm trying a different approach. I'm putting the paste directly on the board and stamping the flower into it. And that gave a totally different look. I liked that look too, so I thought I would use the combination of the two in the piece just to give it a little bit of interest. The modeling paste dries fairly quickly, but you do have some working time with it. And as you can see there, I didn't love the way that one imprint turned out, so I just went over it, smoothed it out, and re-stamped it on there. And then I went in with that sharp edge again just to define some of the petals a little bit, which I didn't end up loving, but when I went in and covered it with the paint that I'm going to use, it all worked out just fine. So there's a lot of forgiveness working with this modeling paste. If you've never used it before, I definitely recommend you give it a try. I got mine, I believe, at Michael's. You can get it on Amazon. I think I might have it in my description list at the bottom of the video. If not, I'm going to put it there for you. But yeah, I just went along the outside perimeter of the entire board there and stamped some of the flowers just in different areas. I picked up a couple of different artificial flowers just to try something different, have a few different shapes and a few different sizes on there, and I'm kind of just going around and alternating those to make some variety around the edge of the piece. Incidentally, I was made aware that some of my audio did not show up on my last video, so I do apologize, and I'm going to try to make sure that does not happen on this one. So sorry about that. Okay, so here I have let the modeling paste completely dry, and actually I did take it outside and hit it with a little bit of sandpaper just to knock down the sharp pieces that would be in danger of breaking off if they bumped up against something. So I sanded that down and just wiped it with a damp cloth to remove all of the dust. And now I'm going over it with a couple of different colors of paint. I am using Payne's Gray and some very old raw umber, which I'm going to have to replace soon because it's almost separating in the tube. I don't know if you know how that can be, but I think it's time for a new one here. But what's happening is I am just going through there and hitting all of those raised surfaces from the modeling paste with the darker colors and making sure it goes down into the little crevices, because this is how I'm going to create some depth in the piece, both visual and literal depth, because it is a three-dimensional element there. So I'm not 100% sure at this point exactly what I want to do with color, so I'm kind of just going over and over it with that fluffy brush and kind of spreading the gray and the brown around a little bit and just adding a little more darkness. I love the way that it's starting to make those flower imprints pop here and there. And I went in with a little bit more of the pink, the light pink color there from Winsor & Newton. That's a color that I really love to use a lot, and I'm sure you'll notice that if you've seen any of my other videos or look at any of my other pieces of artwork. There's something about the Payne's Gray, the raw Sienna and raw Umber, and that pink together. I just love the quality that it creates. So I'm going to just keep going here, adding some more paint until something clicks in my mind, which it eventually does. But while we have a second, I just wanted to thank you all so much for the overwhelming response to my last video. Wow, you guys are amazing. Thank you to everybody that subscribed. I think it was one of my most subscribed videos that I have ever had, and I can't tell you how much that means to me. I'm getting close to 2,500 subscribers, and I feel like I just hit 2,000, so this is like really, really awesome, and I appreciate you guys so much. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe, take a second, pause the video, give me a subscribe if you like this, give me a thumbs up. It really helps me push the videos forward, as I could see from last week's. Amazing, amazing. Thank you guys so much. But anyway, back to the painting. I'm still adding some more color to the textured pieces there, and I'm not exactly sure how I want to proceed from here. I'm kind of thinking that I might want to try to highlight the tops of them. I actually had also considered using gold leaf just on the tips, hitting the tips with a little bit of the foil adhesive and just seeing what would happen, and I think that would be really cool, but that's not the route that I decided to go with this one. So at first I decided to go on in with just a little bit of the white golden fluid acrylic, and the reason why I'm using my color shaper to apply that here is because A, it doesn't allow me to pick up too much at one time, so I'm not really in any danger of dripping or getting it anywhere that I don't want. And B, I can really control just placing it on the top in a way that I wouldn't be able to necessarily do with a brush, because the hairs of the brush are going to go wherever they want to go, and they're going to find those little indentations and low spots and deposit paint there where I don't necessarily want it. But once I started putting the white on, I realized I didn't like it at all, and what it actually needed was black. So I got a little bit of the black golden fluid acrylic out and started applying it over where I had just put the white down and also over all of the rest of the texture pieces, and I just absolutely love the way that made everything pop. It did it in a way that I thought the white was going to do, but wait till you see how this looks here at the end. I could not be any happier with it, and it has a nice gloss to it, which doesn't really matter in the end because I sprayed it with a very glossy finish. But while I was working on it, it was just really cool to look at and be able to see such a sharp contrast between the matte finish of everything underneath and that really shiny, glossy surface on top. So as I apply more and more of that black to all of the high points of the texture, it's really starting to give it a nice aged look that I like. And I think because I used that pink along with that black, that's really helping it too. It's almost like an antique pink, and with that black really pushing those values and really pushing that dimension, I just think it works really well together. I went in with a little more of the black that I had left over and kind of created a bit of a shadow around the edge too, which I really liked, and it kind of further pushed that aged look that I was kind of going for at this point. This is one of the neatest things about being an intuitive artist. I don't know exactly what the piece is going to look like. I often go in with an idea or two. Sometimes they change midway through, like happened with this piece. I was completely intending to use gel print collage papers for this, and when I started going with the modeling paste, it just led me in a completely different direction, which kind of forced me to decision make in a completely different way, which really pushes your creativity, and it pushes your ability to make different decisions based on the criteria that you have available at the moment. And that's one of my very favorite things about creating art in this manner. So I'm going to give it a brief inspection here to see if I am happy with it or if I want to keep going, because it's also kind of difficult to know exactly when to stop sometimes with some of these ideas. But I liked where we were going there. The only thing that was bothering me at this point was the center, because that pink was so flat and it needed a little bit of dimension and maybe some aged look to it too. So what I did there was take some of the burnt umber that I was using and mixed it with some modeling paste, and I'm trying to apply it kind of like a glaze over that pink. All I'm really looking to do is to knock down some of the clean brightness of it and get it to match a little better with the dimensional darkness of the grungy looking prints onto the side there. So I'm just kind of going in randomly. I'm pulling a little bit, or pushing, I should say, a little bit of that color down into, I'm going to say the corners, even though they're not really corners, where the modeling paste meets the pink there, to kind of also give a little bit of depth and dimension. But mostly I'm just trying to grunge it up a little bit. And I'm using that method that I talked about before, where you're dry brushing a little bit of the paint on, and it creates that really filmy kind of, I don't really know how to describe it, but you can see what I'm doing there. Like, it's just pulling the paint in a manner that also makes it look a little more worn. Now it's starting to be time to think about what I want to have as a focal point in the center. So I always first think I should put a bird in there. It's literally every single piece of art that I have. And so I have one that I keep around just as like a test bird, I guess you would say. And I put him in there, and I wasn't sure. But then I decided to go in a completely different route. I'm doing something that I don't typically do, which is using a collage made out of a magazine image transfer. And I typically don't do that for a couple reasons. One, they're pretty unreliable in my experience, and also I prefer to kind of usually use my own images, but I'm going to alter this, so I think it's going to be okay. So what I found there was a picture of a cicada. I know it's probably pretty hard to see from the distance that I have it there, but you'll see it in a minute once I get it pulled up. I was pretty happy with the transfer that went down on the plate, and after I let that dry for much longer than you saw there, I was able to pull it up very well. So I'm going to just cut that image out and actually go in with a pair of scissors and cut out around the actual cicada there, because I want as little of that background black in as possible. I feel like if I add too much black to the pink area, it's going to blend in too much with the texture, the dark textured border that I have around there, and it's not going to really be the focal point that I actually want it to be. So once that's cut out, I kind of move it around to try to find the spot where I want it. I don't ever like to put anything dead center, and you can kind of see there I have it dead center right now, but it works much better either being higher or lower. So I choose to put it in the bottom part of the framed out pink area because I'm going to add some text to the top. And if you've watched my last few videos, I've been doing a lot with the ransom note style gel printing technique, and I will put a link to the video where I demonstrate that at the end. I'm not going to actually show that process here because it can be a little bit tedious and I didn't want the video to end up getting too long. So this is what I'm left with after I get all of those letters printed out on the gel plate. And I just used tissue paper to pick up all of my all of the letters and also the cicada. I don't think I mentioned that, but that is what I really like to use best for collage work because a lot of the tissue just kind of melts into the background and you can still see some of it, but it's not like having a piece of stark white copy paper or something just sitting on the surface of the piece. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all, but for my purposes in this series that I'm doing, it's just not the way that I wanted to go. So the text that I chose was Time of the Season because I thought it was kind of a funny play on the fact that that is a cicada and we've got, I don't know, something like 80,000 different breeds of them coming out in the next couple of months here. So I thought it was kind of timely and a little bit humorous and it kind of just worked. And I like the way that the letters look. I like the way that it looks with the cicada on there. And I think everything works really well with the textured background that I have going on too. I don't know, you guys will have to let me know what you think about all of this. Sometimes I get really lost in the making of these and I will either end up really, really liking something and then walk away from it and go, wow, that's kind of terrible. Or the absolute opposite. I'll get really caught up in the minutia of it and think, this piece is absolutely awful, and then look at it a couple days later and go, oh, I actually love it. So yeah, just let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'm always happy to hear any critiques or whatever you might want to do. Anything is useful. So I wasn't sure where I wanted to go from there, but as soon as I put the letters on there, I realized it was missing something. There needed to be some kind of bridge between what was going on in the middle of the visual frame and what was going on with the texture that was framing it. So I have always been a big fan of using micron pens and doing a lot of fine line work. In some of my past work, you can see this a lot. I'll have to put some of that up on my Etsy shop just so you guys can see examples of that work. I think I do have one piece on there that has a lot of line work, but that's kind of what I went to for this particular piece because it was going to really make both components make sense together. It was going to add just enough to the pink area so that it wasn't just this flat pink blob with some stuff on top of it, which is exactly what I didn't want it to turn into. But it's not going to be so busy that it makes everything combine into one chaotic mess, if you know what I mean. If you put too much in that center part, it's going to all blend with the very highly textured and visually rich area going around the framed pink part. And I definitely wanted to keep that delineation going. So I think using this fine line work really drew the two together in exactly the way that was missing at that point. And while I was working with the micron pen, I went in and just embellished a little bit on the cicada. There were some areas that didn't print as well as I wanted them to, and it just wasn't standing out quite the way I wanted it to initially. So I went in and added some line work to that. And I also went in and added a little bit of ink to the lettering too. I find that when I print those letters on the gel plate, they never fully pull up exactly the way I might want them to, which is fine because sometimes I want that feel, but I thought they were kind of not standing out quite enough. So I went in with the micron pen and did a little bit of work, and actually right at the very end here off camera, I went in with a Posca pen, which is an acrylic paint pen, and pushed it even further. I didn't have the camera on for that because it was sort of like an 11th hour decision after I had already quit the filming process. But you'll be able to see when I show the finished piece at the end that the letters stand out a little bit better. They're not stark black, but they put a little more visual impact where I think it was needed. Finishing a piece is always the hardest part for me, simply because I don't know when to quit sometimes. And I could sit here all night with that pen and do line work, and it's kind of relaxing to me, and I love the way it looks. So I really had to, every couple of minutes, stop and look at it and say, okay, is this too much? Do we need to stop now? Does it need more? Which areas are a little heavy? Which areas are too light? And kind of go from there. But I think I landed in a spot that I'm very happy with, and it all seems pretty well balanced between the focal point and also the texture going around in the framed area. And overall, I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So I had a lot of ideas that I was planning on using in this piece that I did not end up using, so I will probably be pulling those out for the next couple of videos. I don't know exactly, of course, what they're going to look like, but I wanted to print some flowers in color, but just monochromatic, and do a piece that way. And I also had some interesting ideas involving my burned papers, which if you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I'll put one of those at the end of this also, so you can check out the process and see some of the pieces that I created with that. But I think there's a lot of cool stuff coming up, so stick with me here and keep checking back. And also, I don't think I mentioned this, but if you're interested in knowing when one of my videos is going to be dropped, click the bell notification. YouTube isn't always great about pushing things for whatever reason. No one really knows how their magical little algorithm works, but if you click the bell notification, you will always be notified each time I put out a new video, and then you'll be able to see what I was up to. I'm just giving it a final check here to make sure that I am completely happy with the composition and with the balance and everything going on, and I'm finding a small area to sign my piece, and it is ready to go. Okay, here is the finished product of everything we've done today. Overall, I am very happy with how it turned out. I love the contrast. That's my favorite part of it. I love the texture and the technique that I used with the modeling paste. I will definitely be using that again. But thank you all so much for checking out my video and checking out my channel. I appreciate each and every one of you today and always, and I will talk to you again soon. Have a great day.